Working from our DBQ, again, we're still trying to answer this question. Should the Brazilian government develop the Amazon rainforest? In this session, we'll be looking at document 2, Brazil's gross domestic product. And we can see that right from here. And what we're going to try and do is use an economic cause and prove whether or not we should develop the rainforest or we should not develop the rainforest because of those economic reasons. If we're being a good if we're going through and using a document correctly, we're going to make sure that we annotate. First thing that we want to do is we want to be looking at the source. The source of this is coming from the CIA World Factbook. We know that if it's coming from the CIA World Factbook, that this must be a credible source. The next thing that we want to look at is the document note. The document note says that this entry shows where production takes place in an economy. The distribution gives a percentage of contribution of agriculture, industry, and services to total GDP and will total 100% of the GDP if the data are complete. Agriculture includes farming, fishing, and forestry. We want to make sure that we know these definitions because they're going to be vital to us understanding how they set this graph up and their definition of agriculture versus what our definition may be. So they're very clear on what their definition of agriculture is. Farming, fishing, and forestry. The next one is industry. Industry includes, all right, we see that they say industry includes mining, manufacturing, and energy production. And construction. Services cover the government activities, communication, transportation, finance, and all other private economic activities that do not produce material goods. I want you to remember that we're using this as an economic reason. So when we look at this and we see GDP, remember that means the gross domestic product. And our gross domestic product is the total value of goods and services sold in a country in a given year. So everything that is sold in Brazil is totaled up and then is put into one of these three categories. We see that agriculture represents 6%, industry represents 27%, and services represents 67%. 67% of Brazil's economy is covered by the government activities, communication, transportation, finance, and all other private economic activities that do not produce material goods. So we can see that that's the largest segment of their economy. So according to the pie chart, and let's start answering some of these questions, what makes up a majority of Brazil's GDP? So we're going to write services, and we're going to put in like. Services like government activities, communication, transportation, finance, and all other private economic activities. Now let me make these corrections real quick so that it is spelled properly. That do not produce material goods. So when we're looking at this, we see that this is a majority of their economy. That's not even contained into the rainforest. So start thinking to yourself right now, does this support that we need to use the rainforest to maximize our GDP and our expenditures, or do we not need to use the rainforest? All right, so then the next question, what percentage of Brazil's GDP is spent on farming? Now remember, farming and agriculture are synonymous. So we can say that 6%. 6% of Brazil is used in farming. What is the main idea of this document? The main idea of this document is that economically speaking, Brazil is mostly made up of a service industry. Now, I also want you to take into account, when we read the book, what cattle ranchers and what loggers said. According to your book, loggers claim that logging companies have made forestry a valuable economic activity for Brazil. In 2005, Brazil exported more than $5 billion worth of wood. The money earned from these sales is helping Brazil to pay off its debts. It's also making life better for many people. Cattle ranchers also claim that, like logging, that this has become an important part of the economic activity in Brazil. In 2008, the value of beef exported to other countries was more than $3 billion. Brazil can use that money earned from the beef sales to help pay its debt and to take care of its citizens. Now, I bring that up because when we look at their GDP, we look at those numbers of 3 billion and 5 billion and think that those are a lot of money. But when we break it down into these segments and their total GDP, we see that that's not even a drop in the bucket and doesn't even affect the service industry. The service industry seems to be where Brazil is making most of its money. So if we keep that in mind as we try to answer this last question, how could this document be used to answer, should the Brazilian government develop the rainforest? I believe that we see that most of it fits into this no category. No, Brazil should not develop the rainforest because it does not have a significant impact on the economy. Now, I want you to remember, this fits in our economic factors. I'm going to put that up here right now, so that we know as we break down this into different paragraphs, this is going to fit in our economic paragraph. All right, now, if you really want to be creative, I'm sure you can make an economic factor that supports, yes, the government should, all right? The government should develop the rainforest because maybe it's a growth market. If I'm going to say that it's a growth market, I want to prove that agriculture, which just represents 6% of the economy, could possibly grow the economy larger by having more jobs provided into that segment. So I want to make sure that I use that data to support any evidence that I use for this economic factor in GDP. If you still have any questions, please make sure you hit us up on the back channel, or you can come up and talk to Ms. Mahoney or myself.